For a session presented by JCB, please welcome the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at JCB, Eric Liebman, in discussion with Skift branded content editor Darren Frei.
Hey. Eric, hey, how are you?
Good. I'm not in tennis shoes. I feel like I'm overdressed. So.
Well, these are a little too white. I just got them. Thanks for joining us. For those who may not be familiar, JCB is a Japanese-based payments brand, but it's really more of a pan-Asian brand with a global influence. Can you talk a bit about how JCB fits within the payments landscape?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd like to say it's great to be here in person with humans at a show. Everybody's like, a round of applause for being in person. Yeah. It's fun. Been a while since I've been here. So JCB is indeed, it's a Japanese card brand, and it started back in 1961 as right around the time that sort of Visa kicked off. And it became the default payment card for the Japanese market. So it really became very successful, and it was exclusive for a long period of time. And I think that it grew out of the culture in Japan. And for those of you who've been there or have had the pleasure to work with Japanese companies, there's I guess an ethos called omotenashi, which is a Japanese word that really means the obligation to provide hospitality and great service. And I think out of that, we grew a card member base on this very high touch type of engagement with them, rather than being sort of the one brand everybody. It was a little bit more bespoke, I think, for the card members. And so as a result, our card members tend to be more affluent. They tend to be very high average transaction value. And they spend on things like hotels and high-end luxury goods and on T&E and things like this. So they're really kind of the ideal customer for anybody, because these are guys that do actually spend a lot. In the 80s, JCB took themselves out of Japan and issued cards outside in the rest of Asia. So they're now in 19 countries and territories. And we have about 142 million card members around the world. So small compared to a Visa, but pretty big for an Asian brand.
Yeah, it's so interesting about omotenashi. I love that. You've traveled the world in your career, and you know the payment space inside and out with your work with Worldline and JCB and other hotel brands. So I was just wondering, as both a consumer and a payments leader, what are some of the expectations and maybe some of the hurdles that you've noticed with regard to making international payments?
Yeah, so I was a hotelier for 25 years, in and out of the industry, mostly in Asia Pacific, and then I lived in about 10 different countries as part of my career. So I was a career expat, and the frustration of being in one country and trying to book another and going through that whole machination of your payment method and your currency and whatnot has always been a great frustration. And I think some industries get it better than others, but a great illustration would be if you and I were card members in Taiwan, for example, and we want to book a hotel in French Polynesia. And I just saw an ad on a phenomenal hotel there, and so I thought, well, I've got to check out their website. And I went there, and their room rates are displayed in XPF. And who in here knows what an XPF is? Right, exactly. So, all right, so we're all on this website, and we see this thing that says XPF. So we have no idea what that means. And so then I'm going to ONA, or I'm going to some website, or I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is that? Well, that's XP francs. They're French Polynesian francs. And so we have to do the conversion. So that's a friction point right there, right? Yep. And then once I did that, I said, great, okay, so if I want to book, let's book. And it's $5,000 a night is this place. Wow. So now you got high net worth individual is here maybe booking, or maybe their assistant's booking. And when you get through the payment page, now we're JCB card holders. Mm-hmm. And we want to pay with our JCB card. And on the checkout or on the page where you pay, because it's fully prepaid, there's 3 brands that we all know, right? And so now you create another friction point for me. So I have 2 choices. I can either fish out a Visa card if I have one, or American Express or whatever it is, or I don't go. Or what they did back in the 90s when I was in the Caribbean with a Marriott, and I was working at a resort there, and we would have guests from China show up with briefcases of cash. And so they show at the front desk, they go click, click, and it's like you'd expect heroin in one thing and cash in another, and it's like going on, it's like, like this kind of thing. Because all they had was a China Union Pay card, and the Union Pay card was a debit tied to their bank account. So there was no way, nobody knew what to do with that outside, right? So there was this, great kind of disconnect between what people wanted to pay and how they could pay. So I call it the, tail wagging the dog, right? So really the customers aren't driving that decision.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like over the past 5 years even, the payment space has evolved quite a bit. How is that linked to the current challenges facing the industry post-pandemic?
So, good point. So I think globally, payments, and look, everybody's eyes probably glaze over. I see a lot of people doing emails now. I'm talking about payments. I get it. I was in this space for a long time. If a guy came up from like MasterCard or whatever, I was like, perfect time to check email, see how the dog's doing at home, get that coffee outside, right? It is not sexy. I get it, right? But if you get into it, it's actually pretty cool, right? And so because it's part of a kind of a bigger customer strategy, I know we're going to talk about that, right? But the whole thing about payments is that it's really, I guess it's an art of letting the customer drive the decision, right, as to how they're going to pay rather than the other way around. And I think that what we find in most industries is they're starting to get it. And that's because the backing of that is really from companies like WorldPay or Adyen or Worldline or Ingenico, names you may have heard, right? These are the guys, these are the monolithic, billion or trillion dollar companies like Chase that manage all these payments around the world. Every time you stick that credit card in a machine, these are the guys in the back end. Well, they can handle pretty well anything online. So I came from Worldline and before that US Bank, and I can tell you, you could throw NavalInt and I could turn it into cash. It was not a problem. But then in the hotel industry, we are literally at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to payments because I can do pretty well anything on the app or in the web because I have these partners that can help me. They do all the stuff in the background and accept anything you want. But when I come to the property, now I've got to pony up some form of payment for incidentals, right? We do pre-auth, we do incidental, we do incremental auth, we do checkout and post-stay. So I've got to have a payment method that survives those four methods, and I can't do that with a QR code now, right? So what's happening is that we have great things for what I call the one and done. So retail, even OTAs, airlines get it. Airlines totally get this, by the way. They're way ahead of the curve in payments. And the likes of, we were talking earlier, Sonder, the Airbnbs, these guys, because a lot of their, not all, as I heard this morning, but not all are, but a lot of them are one and done. So you pay your service fees, your cleaning fees, your upfront fees, you're done. So there's nothing else. So they can accept anything you want to pay them. But when we come to a hotel and I've used my WeChat Pay to pay on the app, well, what happens when I get on property? Now I'm stuck because you don't have a QR reader. I don't have something that ties back to my bank account. Or even PayPal, something as common as PayPal. We don't really have, in most cases, a way to do that. So we're way behind the curve.
Yeah. You mentioned customer strategy a little bit earlier. It seems like most hotels just sort of see payments as this necessary part of doing business and not necessarily they don't really think much of it beyond that. Are payments playing an increasingly sort of important role in terms of guest services strategies?
Yes, I go back again to the email when the payment guy comes on. So I think that it's very much, it's always been a back office function, right? So it's been about someone in accounting or maybe treasury handles payment. It's really between the bank and them, and we don't care. We're either sales guys or we're ops guys or we're loyalty or whatever, and it's not part of our world. But really, it is, and it should be. And if you look at the payments in terms of anything, it's kind of the first, and in our business, the last mile of a guest encounter, right? Because when they book, they're going to guarantee or some form of payment is going to be exchanged. And then when they check out, they're charged. So we're kind of the bookends, if you will, right? And so getting that right, I think, is really important. So with the people who are getting more aligned with that, so the bigger hotel brands, if any of you from hotel brands, you probably know you have a payment guy. Like Marriott has one, Pam Stoltz is by herself, and I think there's one for IHG. And so I think, it's getting there, but I think we're starting to realize that there's a bigger realm of this thing. And show of hands, is anyone going to Hedna in Atlanta in 2 weeks? Anybody know what Hedna is? Does anyone own a dog? Can I get a show of hands? Do you all? No, okay, okay, good. I thought you were all frozen there. It's the online world again, right? Where it's like, did I freeze?
Right. It's been a while, right?
But no. So Hedna is a Hotel Electronic Distribution Networking Association. So it's an association of hoteliers that started out back in the 90s, I think, in the world of GDS, and now have moved into all things hotel. They set standards for a lot of different things, mostly around the digital realm, whatnot. And so a few years ago, they started a payment stream, and it was a room about this size. And I went in there, and a chap named Mike Carlo was running it. It's a good friend of mine, big payment guy. And I thought there'd be like 4 people in there. So I thought, I got to go and support Mike, you know. And I walked in there, and it was standing room only. It was packed. And I asked people in there what they were doing, and they came from everywhere, Four Seasons and from, you know, Aman Resorts in the whole realm. And they said, yeah, we want to get this stuff because we realize it's really important to figure it out. So I think it's gaining more and more relevance in the industry. So.
With contactless payments, you mentioned, you know, WeChat and QR codes. How are hotels managing that, and how can they better manage those forms of payments because they're becoming so popular? You know, do hotels have QR codes in the reception areas? To, you know?
Does anybody in here from a hotel have a QR reader in their front desk? Anyone? Okay. Is there a Sheraton guy here? They may have one. Because I know we've been hitting Sheraton pretty hard. So, honestly, no is the answer. I don't know of one.
Yeah.
And we're not going to solve this as hoteliers. And so, again, I don't know how many people in here are physically from hotels, but as hoteliers, I don't think we're going to solve that problem. Who's going to solve it for us is in collaboration with the likes of Oracle Hospitality and Sabre and Amadeus and Infor and Agilysys and all these, and Ingenicos and Shift4s and these guys that provide the technology layers, all of the ecosystem that we use to basically run our hotels that, again, depending on what part of the business you're from, you may not even know those names or ever heard of them or care about them, but that's really how the business of hotel manages, front office and back office. And so we need to get with these guys to really give us the platform that allows us to get QR readers that would store that as a stored card in our system, so incremental loss can go straight out to a bank, you know, this open banking thing, and be able to do that. So I think when we collaborate with them together, we'll probably see that move forward. Until then, I think we're still stuck with the briefcase of cash.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, Eric, on that note, I think we're just about out of time, but thanks so much for joining us. Everyone, if you want to learn more about JCB, just go to global.jcb. or check out the QR code for those virtually. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.